Good afternoon, everyone. If you please take your seats. I know this is an exciting time. Everyone comes in and sees people they haven't met. I'm Shannon Gibson. I'm the Dean of the David B. O'Malley College of Business. And in conjunction with the other colleges across our campus, I'm really excited to welcome you to our panel on diversity in the aviation and aerospace industries. Without further ado, I'm going to hand off to our panel moderator, Samantha.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sam. I'm a senior here at the David B. O'Malley College of Business. I graduate this December. I'm a College of Business ambassador, business eagle, and I'm super excited to moderate our panel today. Oh, we just got one of our panelists. And I'm going to start with the panel. Our first question is can you please introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and can you briefly share why you personally believe diversity inclusion matters into the aerospace industry?
Yep. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Kate Frazier. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton. I help lead our growth within our climate and infrastructure business. If you haven't heard of Booz Allen, that's okay. They're not your traditional aviation company. It's a government contractor where we support pretty much every branch of government. Specifically, my work is within the FAA and transportation. My background is I'm a pilot by trade. I fortunately did not graduate from undergrad here, graduated from Kansas State. Eventually got my master's from Embry-Riddle in human factors. I have worked a little bit of everywhere in the past 15 years, starting out with a trade association that represented aircraft manufacturers, worked for the FAA in their Office of Accident Investigation and Prevention. I also was the director of safety at NetJets, the head of safety at Joby Aviation, and then again recently joined Booz Allen about 2.5 years ago. I am particularly passionate about aviation. The numbers speak for themselves. I think we are still at about 6% of the aviation population are women. Which is obviously incredibly low, especially for the year 2024. I previously sat on the DOT Women in Aviation Advisory Board that was commissioned in 2020. There were 30 women on that board. We worked for a few years, put out our 55 recommendations to Congress and the FAA, and we're still fighting very hard to see those recommendations implemented. Obviously, there's a lot more that we can do, and we're going to get into that during this panel, which I'm very excited about. But I will say my number one thing in terms of why I'm so passionate about diversity throughout the industry is because it's a survival issue. This industry will not survive if we only hire white men, flat out, period. We don't have the numbers, and again, we'll talk about that. But it's not a DE&I issue. It's not a woke issue. It is all those things too, if whatever you want to label it. But it is an industry survival thing, and we have to all focus on how we can make this industry better and grow it. And diversity in the workforce is one of the easiest ways to make that happen.
Thank you so much, Kate. My name is Hervé Lavenant. I am Managing Director of Logistics Services at United Airlines. I've been with the airline now 19 years, and I am also a proud graduate of Embry-Riddle. MBA 2005. I also have an undergrad and grad in mechanical and aerospace engineering. Today I lead the logistics worldwide, but I've had a wide array of roles at United. This is my 12th role in 19 years, and I've worked in 7 different divisions at United. So I've seen quite a bit of the business, both the commercial and the operation side of the airline. As it relates to diversity, why does it matter to me? So first and foremost, people have characteristics that are visible and invisible and each carry value. There isn't a single human being on this planet that doesn't have value, and we all have to be represented and actually become visible. The second aspect to this, which is more paramount to this industry, is exactly what Kate mentioned. When you hear United in the news saying United is going to reserve 50% in its apprenticeship program of roles to women and people of color, we're still going to hire the same white males. But on top of that, we're going to hire all those women and people of color. And to the point that Kate was making is that pool of white male is too small to fulfill the demand. And so we are expanding the pool. And the way you expand the pool, you look at untapped resources. And the way you do this is you promote those untapped resources. and you create that snowball effect that enables you to enlarge the pool. And that is so important for the survival of this industry to the point you've made.
Well, thank you. I'm Jay D'Amico. I'm the President and Chief Executive Officer of STEAM Solutions Group. It's an element that I guess is requiring a little bit of explanation, like why am I here today? I'm completely different background from many of the other people that are on this committee, and largely unrelated until quite recently, specifically to aerospace and aeronautic technologies. Now, again, why am I here today? One is that over the past 40 years, and I'm probably older than most people in this room collectively, we've accumulated a group of organizations that address a broad range of industries, engineering disciplines, scientific elements that cross-pollinate between application engineering and high science. I'm privileged to have co-founded the Engineering Physics Propulsion Lab here at Embry-Riddle. I know the leadership of that very well for over 20 years. And we have funded the further development of that as a growing resource for multiple use application of the engineering talents that exist within the university community, academia, and matching that through alignment with the needs of industry. Now, as I said, I am not from aerospace or aeronautic engineering. I'm a mechanical engineer by trade and have built a group of companies over many years that have operations throughout the United States and some in Europe and in the Middle East. What we're focusing on now is to an earlier comment that was made, is the need for the fulfillment channel of opportunity in technical fields and to try to capitalize in a major way on the transferability of skill sets that exist within this organization, within this institution, that can be built upon that are beyond aviation. Now, why is that an issue? And why are we really here today? People that are, let's say, at the junior, sophomore level, that are looking for productive opportunities. There's always opportunity, frankly, in chaos. I've learned that over the years. And the marketplace is currently in a chaotic state. And the actual transfer of that state over an extended period of time, like in my case, like let's say over the 20 years, past 20 years, I've seen massive changes in the workforce, in the skill sets in that workforce, in the type of tools that are used to apply problems that exist, or I should say challenges and opportunities that exist in industry that need to be bridged from the high science that exists in academia to be reapplied into industry. And there's tremendous opportunity in that. And as younger people, I wish I was your age right now because I think it's unparalleled. And artificial intelligence is going to be driving that. Quantum computing is going to be driving that. And to be brutally direct, industry, like mid-sized and smaller organizations, do not have the resources to address and tap opportunities in technology like that. So what we do instead is reach out to institutions like this, like if we need a thermodynamics expert, or let's say we need someone that's familiar with high-end control theory. We'll tap that for a specific project, but we'll also tap the resources in laboratory involvement, which is part of, I think, a key diversity channel. People that are very interested in participating in application and understanding what the real world is like. The laboratories that this university and some of the sponsors have invested in provide a perfect avenue for that. And I would encourage each and every one of you that are inclined to it, trying to find out, well, where do I fit? I'm going to be graduating. Do I want to go to graduate school? Do I want to go ahead and go to work? Where I'm going to find a job, fundamentally. That gives you a different insight. And there's an ongoing program with very progressive thinking within this institution to try to facilitate channels for you to accomplish that. Now, what does that have to do with diversity? Again, exactly right. There aren't enough people to fulfill these types of roles that I'm describing. It's not in industry, in high science. We need every single able-bodied person to be brought to that challenge. And that's something that we feel very strongly about, because as a mid-sized organization with about 300 people in it, it is survival. To the earlier comment, it very definitely is that. Because you may not realize, but you're in a very lucrative niche. We are a for-profit organization. That's very important to us to be on the leading edge of technology and to invest a disproportionate amount of our revenues back into research. That can be the incubator of innovation, because mid-sized and smaller organizations create actually collectively more innovation than the huge entities that have the legitimate resources to do it, because they're more nimble, they can be flexible, they can find opportunities. If it's a failure, cut your losses and move on and go to something else. You can't do that in a big bureaucratic organization. But that's why it's so important to organizations like us. And I'm, I guess, the odd person in the room, because like I say, I'm not from aviation, but I'm definitely interested in the high technology that this institution has embraced. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jubin Wataharian. So, yes, I'm also from Embry-Riddle, graduated undergrad here and grad in business administration. So career-wise, I've airline hopped quite a bit. So from TWA to American and Continental and US Airways, you name it, here and there. And today I'm up in Newark at the new terminal out there, helping the Port Authority run the new Terminal 8. Reason why this subject is important to me is threefold. One, I'll actually piggyback on what an old friend has reminded me of, is that back to the question of why is this subject so important in sort of aviation and airspace and sort of the industry that we're in. This industry is really a global industry, right? Where, when you start looking at some of these companies that are mega and they go across boundaries, north, south, east, west, you name it, diversity, inclusion naturally have to be part of the equation so that the company can actually function across all these boundaries. So globalization is certainly one key element as to why the subject is, I think, very important for the success of these companies. We've talked about through classrooms this morning about one word, and the word being culture. Culture becomes a competitive edge. Not so much about anybody can get a good degree and everybody can get learn math and physics and so on and so forth. But what really differentiates companies, among others, is the fact that you're bringing up, if you will, a culture over the decades that is going to be leapfrogging everybody else. And so I was at American Airlines prior to my current engagement. That was a huge focus. We put two airlines together, and for those of you guys who study a lot enough about where the airlines have been pre 9/11, post 9/11, or post deregulation, lots of bankruptcies and union issues and so on and so forth. So after all these consolidations have occurred, the focus with American Airlines was, look, now that we've sort of set up ourselves for success for the long term, how are we going to differentiate ourselves against the deltas in the United, and it's going to be culture, and therefore diversity, inclusion, and so on needs to be really be part of the equation. So again, full circle back to the whole culture, globalization, and whatnot. The second element is the word knowledge. The word knowledge, in my opinion, does not have a religion, doesn't have a skin color, doesn't have a nationality, doesn't have a sex. It's just knowledge. And we all can have knowledge. And so I don't think that that by default should be a reason why anybody should be looked at differently. If you have the knowledge, then you're the candidate, you have to be the person. And so I think that just, to me, that's sort of the other element as to why we really need to be looking at everybody equally in that look at the end of the day, what again keeps anybody aligned in terms of what they're fit or not or whatnot, is really the knowledge that they bring to the table. So, and the third element is, so I go back and look at my own life, and straight up, I tell you guys, I've changed a lot. The person that you might see sitting here today is certainly not the person who was going to college here. Throughout the years, I've learned a lot. I've had mentors and folks who've taught me more and how to be a better person for the community and society. And notably, one of them is actually my wife. I did not I did not expect that one day I would have 3 girls. And so the 3 girls that we have today, 2 of them happen to have learning disabilities. And so when we are faced with the idea of putting them in school, putting them into, you know, a normal environment, well, the question is, what's normal, right? How can we fit them within that normal environment for them to succeed? And so we've actually been challenged with that idea, right, of inclusion, if you will, right? How do you set 2 young girls into the milieu that we live in today for them to acquire the knowledge, and again, that is needed for them to be successful on the long term. So I've been a huge sponsor of the subject for, again, several different reasons, and I think that wraps it up for me.
I guess it's my turn. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gad Wavamba. Hopefully you can hear me properly. Apologies, I'm not there in person, but it's a pleasure to be with you all. I am the Vice President of Leasing for AerCap, the leasing company based out of Ireland, and I'm based in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai. I'm really happy to be here today with you all, specifically to the students. I think, first of all, well done for all of you students showing up today for this conversation. I know all of us who are on the panel really have a passion for this topic, including myself. And so equally, it's appreciative that you've dedicated your time to hear perspectives. And clearly, I resonate with my colleagues on the panel with the passion for diversity and inclusion. But for me specifically, it clearly runs through my veins. Every day, I work in an environment and deal with diversity personally and professionally. And I'll even give you an example today. So I started my morning at the gym, and I was with 2 South Africans, an Irish person, and someone from Thailand. I then got to the office. I had some tough negotiations with the Egyptians. I then had a call later this afternoon with my mother because she's wondering about Thanksgiving plans. And I had a long dinner with Angolans who I'm negotiating a deal with some aircraft. Who 2 of them actually went to Embry-Riddle. Had a call with Boeing from Seattle, since it's Seattle's waking up, or was waking up at the time. And now I'm in front of you all. And so I think it gives the perfect example that diversity is truly global. You as students will deal with it in your careers one way or another. And whether it's professionally or personally, it's something that needs to be instituted in your minds, but also be a perspective that you need to continue following on the journey. So I'm looking forward to the discussions and the dialogue today, and it's a pleasure being with you all.
Thank you. So we have a lot of different people from a lot of different aspects and different industries. And something that I know a lot of my peers and I have talked about is how do those organizations define diversity and how do they measure diversity? So I think what we're really wondering is how does your organization define and classify diversity?
Are we going down the line? I'm happy
I
to
guess we'll go
start.
down the
Let me
line
start.
still.
So I'm going to speak more generally, I think, about the industry from my perspective, just because, again, I work now in a slightly different world. So I want to talk a little bit more about the aviation industry. And what I will say is there's textbook definitions, so that's fine. What I want to focus in on is what does that industry look like? So we understand how to define it, great. What do the numbers look like? What does that feeling look like? We were talking about this a little bit before we got on this panel. For those of you, I happily send the link to anyone, but the DOT Women in Aviation Advisory Board report is public, and in our 55 recommendations, again, we have a lot of ideas about how to improve the industry overall. But there's a statistic in there that we talk about from some of the research we conducted during this work, specifically focused on why do women leave the industry? What is generally preventing them from either moving on up or sticking within the aviation industry? And of the people, the significant research that we conducted, 50% of women said that they had considered leaving the industry. And the number one reason for considering to leave the industry was culture. It was bias, it was harassment, and it was discrimination. And this was 4 years ago. So we haven't seen any significant changes, and it's still 2020s, and that is the number one reason that women are considering leaving the industry. To me, that means that we still have a significant diversity problem. That means that the numbers reflect that. Again, you can look at the statistics. It gets even worse when you get into maintenance. It's still 1% women. For women of color, it's 1% pilots. I mean, those numbers are dismal, and you don't see that in any other industry. So I think until we can fix the culture, and I'm really excited to be sitting next to United because I love the work that they're doing, and you can actually look at what it means to define this type of work. Until we can get to the point that we can actually have reasonable numbers, and the fact that the number one reason that women are leaving the industry isn't due to bias and discrimination and harassment, then I would say that that's a win.
So from a United standpoint, when you look at diversity, of course, diversity, it's encompassing everybody, right? And diversity to us goes along with equity and inclusion. I'm going to stop on that last word, inclusion. Inclusion means include everybody. Inclusion doesn't mean exclusion. Inclusion is including everybody, including of people that may not believe into inclusion, because you have got to hear all voices. That is one very important feat of DEI. Okay, but the way ultimately we practice it, because it is practice, it is not promise, is to actually put framework, policy, structure in place to make sure that you're able to reach the goals it is you want to reach. And so if you think about the aviation industry, to the point Kate made, if you think about the airline industry, to the point that Kate made very specifically, we are not looking like society. The problem is that we don't have a reason not to look like society, which means that we've perpetrated a culture of cooptation that makes that we do not look like society. But we can change this. We can change this by enlarging the pool. We can change this by changing the culture actually within the airline. And if you think about a company that is really a customer service company, if a customer service company is not able to relate to the customer, aka society, right? If you're not able to talk to your customer, if you're not able to relate to them, your customer ain't gonna follow you very long. And so what we saw very quickly is that across a population segment is less diverse, we had a huge following. But across the Gen Z, our reputation was dismal. Across the millennials, our reputation was dismal. And we saw very tangible number of that, especially on the West Coast, where it was much, much more prevailing. And so back in the days when Virgin America still was a thing in San Francisco, flyers would choose Virgin America over United day after day after day after day. There was a huge gap in perception from our customer base. And so you've got to be able to change the narrative, change the discourse. And the way you do this, you adapt. You adapt to your customers and you adapt the basis of the people that works for you, your employee set. So COVID, to the extent, was a fantastic reset because it really enabled us to culturally focus on hiring the right folks and two, actually instilling the right culture. And I give huge credit to Oscar when he was our CEO to really starting that reset and to Scott on continuing that reset. And so what you've seen is a lot of training of our teams, customer service on the one end, but also the folks that are not on the front line or the back office of the front line, aka the folks in the flight deck. But we've really primarily insisted on our flight attendants and our customer service agent and ensuring that there is this buy-in on what DEI is. And what it does mean is that we've also enabled our employees to make sure that they feel well at work, that they can be themselves, and that they can feel that they either represent or are represented, are role models that they can aspire to be at the end of the day, because that enables them to better connect with our customers. And so that's how you start resetting a culture to make sure that you're much more appealing at the end of the day. Now that is one aspect. And so we've pushed that. We've pushed the boundaries. We've been, I think, trailblazer in the space. And amongst other things, up until 5 years ago, I think now, all employees could not have a tattoo. They couldn't. It was forbidden. They could not have a visible tattoo. Now they can have a tattoo that is no larger than the employee ID. It's pretty strict, but we've had a lot of employees that have actually been eliminated, or potential employee, prospective employees that have been eliminated because they had a tattoo. They might have been great at customer service. They might have been to connect with the people, but they had this tattoo, and that didn't work for us. They now have the ability to wear very subtle earrings or nose rings. We've implemented this a couple of years ago. And guess what? It actually frees the employee to feel the way they are. And that's been a big deal. And then there's this pilot space and there's the technical space. Jay, you've spoken about the shortages that you face. We know in the aviation industry, it is a matter of survival, both on the pilot side of the house and the MP side of the house. And so there, we've really been very incisive with our apprenticeship programs. Both of them Calibrate for the technicians and Aviate with a pilot program where we've placed those quotas. And those quotas enable us to expand the pool again, not rob from the pool. And at the end of the day, those pilots graduating from the Aviate program, those technicians graduating from the Calibrate program, I've got to go through the same level of safety and the same level of qualification than any other pilot. But by expanding the pool, we're able to create generational wealth, and we're able to create a future population that will actually want to come and work for United Airlines. And that is good goes around. Interestingly, if today you're investing to the son of a pilot that is a white pilot, game over. It's a sunk cost because that pilot's son was already likely to become a pilot. And so you've wasted an investment. So you actually invest your money where your money actually matters to actually generate a return on your investment. So it's very good from that standpoint. When it comes to measuring this, we look at statistics. I look at statistics even in my organization, at my level in my organization. I look at how many people in my organization do I have per gender and per background, ethnic background. And we encourage our employees to self-ID. That is very important to us. But by me looking at the characteristics of my employees, what I aim to do is balance whether I have a representation of the society on my employee basis. Because ultimately, they also provide different ideas, they provide different inputs, they provide different values, and that enables me to provide a critical point when it comes down to actually doing analytics, when it comes down to doing business cases, and that really enables us to grow ultimately our value set and to provide better outcomes.
Thank you very much. You know, this is very insightful, listening to the perspective of entities that are Fortune 500 companies that have thousands and thousands of employees. That's not who we are. So we have to approach diversity in a different way. In many cases, first and foremost, the culture of the organization has to maintain a sustainable focus that reinforces that ethic day by day, number one. Number two, we all have this, we believe in like a matrix type organization where in effect, in lieu of a pyramidal hierarchy, it's basically the individual that has the highest level of competency in the specific project or opportunity that we have to address. That's who leads that project. So in that scenario, if the person that sweeps the floors in a machine shop is more qualified than I am, I would report to him in that project. And that's very, very specific. Now, why do I bring that up in that context? Because in essence, the competency level, number one, is driven by the ability of our people, all of whom serve one focus, and that's the client. In other words, we all answer to some degree to the clients that we serve. Consequently, the organization has to mirror and empathize with the diverse cultures that we serve, and we're principally, while we have spotted locations throughout the country and everything, we're more of a regionally focused entity, and the ethnicity associated with the recruitment processes that we take in specific regions is a self-fulfilling process because that's who the applicants are, number one. And we embrace that. And I'll be very direct with you. We do not have the sophistication of the statistical controls, analytics, even like hiring algorithms that major organizations like United and other large publicly held entities have. It gets back to the earlier statement, it's survival. So consequently, the diverse nature of the projects that we apply in many ways actually support the diverse complement of people that are required to fulfill the obligation. Now, if there is, let's say, a narrowly focused technical discipline that only a handful of people really have, in many cases, those skill sets, let's say it's a pretty detailed engineering application. Many of those people, and this goes across all ethnicities, genders, many of those people might be very introverted. So consequently, the person that would be assigned to present the value proposition to the client would have to have an understanding of the technical side, but their ability to speak in front of a group, convey a salient message that embraces the key elements of the value proposition is actually equal to or almost more important than the detail engineering side on the front end of an application. Because if you can't express yourself, in other words, they're not going to be interested in if you can solve a third order differential equation in 20 minutes. The issue is what basically is the message? Now, who are they going to listen to that message? Who are you going to really relate to? That's where peers come into play. If there is, let's say, common ethnicity, common gender, which is growing in an organization like ours, as an example, over 38% of our recent recruits have been some form of a minority. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, oh, well, we have this sophisticated model that we use to select these people to exactly match the demographics that particular market that they serve. It's based upon pure and simple merit. In a smaller organization, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because we have many people in our organization. Our organization, by the way, is 95 years old. Even though I look like I might have been there at the founding, I was not, contrary to what people will say. But I've been there for 40 years. So the fact of the matter is, number one, we don't believe in nepotism. We believe in pure application of talent and the reinforcement of talent, building upon the inherent strengths with that individual. So in other words, if the culture is one of reinforcement as opposed to statistical application of sophisticated models, with smaller organization, that can be the most powerful tool that you have, because we've competed against companies that are literally 20, 50, 100 times bigger than we are, but we're a niche. And that niche is really almost totally dependent upon the diversity that we depend upon and have almost through our entire history. Because we give opportunities to people that are interested. We hire on the basis of character. Took me a long time to figure that out. But the high science, the technical side of things, that's more easily transferred than character is. Now, character building, not necessarily the role of the employer, but it is endemic upon the employer's success. Because if you exemplify treating people with respect, with fairness, do not make any discriminatory decisions based upon ethnicity, gender, all the things that divide us, the absolute atmosphere in the organization and morale is improved exponentially. We have acquired organizations that were much like were described early in some comments. And our simplistic model of a matrix organization, treating people fairly, and with the overriding understanding that we all work for the client. At the end of the day, that's who we serve. That's who we are. We're a service organization, whether it's engineering, product support, and further, we serve a wide range of entities, like all the bad words I'm going to use, like refining, petrochemical, pulp and paper, healthcare, higher education, because all of them require heating systems. And we do a lot of that in a specialized way. Now, if you can imagine anywhere for someone from basically a pipe fitter welding application all the way to, let's say, a physical plant director that may have very strong engineering talents. We have to touch every one of those people Every one of those people, from the welder to the top guy, at some level, we have to engage that individual. So consequently, the organizations that we serve, which again, we are not aviation oriented. We've supported aviation opportunities. And why is that though? Opportunities that were driven by this institution that you're sitting in right now through research and development efforts. Why I'm bringing that up is that we've learned that the people that pursue individual project opportunities outside of the actual assigned curriculum because of their own keen interest in either, let's say, being a perpetual learner or to pursue a specific discipline that they may have an idea for, we see that as an incubator. That's how we get innovative ideas. We don't go in with, a company our size, we don't have a full-scale research and development department. So we garner those ideas and then we try to align it with the applications that we see using the experience of a 95-year-old company to match the two and bridge that gap. And there's tremendous opportunity in that. Our growth over the past 4 years since COVID, and I would echo some of the comments that were made earlier. COVID was actually an opportunity with a mindset and a management regimen like ours, because crazy as we are, we hired people during COVID. Now, why was that? Because some of the same people that were being laid off from major Fortune 500 companies, we couldn't have touched prior to that. So we took the initiative. We didn't lay anybody off. We've never laid anybody off in our history. And we hired additional people, even if we didn't need them at that particular time, because they would actually become embedded into our culture, reinforced in character in that ethic that we apply. And as things picked up, which we had an abiding faith that they would, and they did, the last, I guess, 3 years since COVID has been the best in our history. So why I'm saying that is because sometimes you have to have a contrarian investment approach. And in doing so, that falls right in line, absolutely in line with diversity, because you'll never achieve that if you take a singularity of purpose with the same old white male. And you're looking at this old guy sitting up here. What does he know? Well, he knows one thing. He knows that there is strength in diversity. And in a company our size, again, it's survival. You don't have a chance.
You know, thank you for all that. I think there's a great playbook to be written here from everything we heard, because companies like mine who are very new, and it's a company that, new to the country of the United States, they're German. They got a lot to learn, because not to say that, they're bad people, they just don't know about what needs to be done here to be successful. And really truly hearing everything you said here, we could be translated into a executable playbook that could be leveraged for other companies. Because to the question, right, what are we doing? How are we measuring? A lot of companies don't do anything. They don't measure anything. And it's sort of, you go on a day-to-day business and lots of people end up leaving. And for it to have a proper game plan to be executable, it requires a proper strategy towards it. So, Gad, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I echo many of the things you've all said. I think I'll just add to kind of from an AirCap perspective. So at our company, I think there's two things that I can proudly speak to. One is when it comes to diversity, it's within our goals and our mission. We are a global company. We have more than 2,000 aircraft operating across the globe, more than 300 customers all across the world. So it's something that our board and our leadership take very seriously. And there's two takeaways that I'd like to share. One is, we celebrate diversity through many of the achievements that have happened throughout lifetime. So we share different events, such as, Women's Month, Black History Month, Pride Week, and many other elements are shared throughout the entire company every single week. And that is great to see that across the globe. Eid, Muslim holiday, and even Diwali, and so forth, because we are a global company and because we have so many employees, but let alone so many customers. And the other thing is that we also embrace the inclusivity. So we make sure that at AirCap, everyone, or we strive to make sure everybody has a seat at the table, no matter what level you are in the organization, no matter if you're a new person, if you're an executive like myself. We strive for that. If someone hasn't voiced their opinion, if someone isn't heard, we make that opportunity available for that person. And it's something that's reinstated even to myself. We have diversity training, and everybody has to take that quite seriously, because you could be, negotiating with a customer, or you could be trying to solve an issue with transitioning an aircraft from one country to another, but you have to be heard and you have to be inclusive on both sides of the table. So these are two elements that we're really proud of, that we continue to implement across our organization. And then the other thing I think that's quite interesting, I like to share from our company, is we are an Irish company based in Dublin, but 60% of the workforce is not Irish. And that includes even at the senior leadership level. So we have people from all over the world. As you see, I'm from the United States. I'm from San Diego, California, and I'm based in Dubai. And we have most of our C-suite is non-Irish, and proud to say that we promoted 60% of our workforce that was promoted were women. And so we are really taking these things seriously, because we're seeing the value it adds to our results. It's definitely driven a lot of benefits throughout the company, but also to our customers. So that's kind of what I can say from our perspective at AirCap.
Thank you. So we've talked a little bit about how there's programs in place at AirCap, how we measure the numbers. And then I was wondering, you're the leaders of your industry, and how do you envision the future of diversity in the workplace? And then sitting in this room, we do have the future leaders of this industry. So what advice do you offer to us as the next generation to keep fostering and hope for our inclusive environments?
Yeah, so I just want to say, kind of maybe following on a little bit of the things that were said earlier. So it's on all of us, right? It's not a hiring activity. It's not a statistical exercise. When we talked about, again, what makes people stay in this workforce, it's culture. Do they belong? Even, I mean, airlines and operators until recently didn't even have maternity uniforms for their pilots and mechanics, right? Talk about not belonging in an industry where you literally cannot get pregnant. A lot of these companies still don't have parental leave of any kind. How can you be a parent for a company that doesn't allow you time off for basic activities? There's some very significant changes that need to happen across the industry, small or large, it doesn't matter what the company size is, for this industry to better reflect the people that live in our country and our world. I will say too, it's one of the recommendations of the Women in Aviation Advisory Board when we talk about things that companies can do and things that you all can participate in. It's that support for each other. We talk about like employer resource groups, right? That's something that can happen at a company of 10 people or a company of 50,000. It doesn't really matter. We started one when I worked at Joby Aviation. We were a couple hundred people, and we had a Women of Joby group. And it was actually became a selling point for when we were recruiting women. It helped with retention. It helped with hiring additional people, little things like that, changes to the way that, again, the company operates, whether it's healthcare, mental health care, parental leave, changing your basic language, the way that you talk about people, the way that you talk in an inclusive manner, the way that you address them in meetings, who you invite to meetings. It's very easy to say it's a hiring issue or it's a promotion issue. It's not. It's a cultural issue, and that means significant changes for this industry. And I love talking about it because I love making people feel uncomfortable about it, because we are at a point where if we don't make people feel uncomfortable, we're doing something wrong. And my favorite kind of, it's not really a fun fact, we'll say it's a fun fact, is there was this report in 1997. It was the White House Report for Aviation Safety and Security. And this report quoted a statistic that said if nothing changed and the industry grew the way that it predicted, there would be one fatal accident globally every single week by the year 2015. And that's airlines. So one commercial 121 accident every single week, because that's how bad the accident rate was in the mid 90s. So the industry, together collaboratively with the FAA, made significant changes that spurred the commercial aviation safety team, that led to massive changes both in the technology on the aircraft as well as training and development. We are now in the safest period we've ever had because the industry had to make uncomfortable changes. We are at the same point. If you look at the Women in Aviation Advisory Board report, we talk about how in the next several decades, the numbers that are required to staff the industry globally, 600,000 new pilots globally within the next several decades. For mechanics, it's 620,000. We are absolutely at a point where we cannot come up with those numbers if we don't change the industry. And again, it's not about hiring. It is about a massive ecosystem change that starts literally from kids all the way up to advancement to the executive level. That industry has to be there to support all types of people. And if we don't make those changes, we are going to be in a world of hurt in the next several decades.
I think I would echo what Kate mentions. I'm not going to mention that much more, and I'll take slightly different tack on where I see us headed. Today, we across corporations, whether they are large or small, affinity groups are one of the prevailing mode where we're able to engage our employees, where we're able to retain our employees, and they're a fantastic mechanism to do that. Now, what you really quickly realize when you are leader of a BRG is that the amount of intersectionality across BRG is massive. You don't choose to be a woman. You don't choose to be Black. You don't choose to be Latino. You don't choose to be LGBT. You don't choose to have a disability, and so on and so forth. The fact is, you have a combination of all of those every time. And so you might be a Black woman. And guess what? You belong to two groups. You might be a disabled veteran. Guess what? You belong to two groups. In fact, you might be a disabled woman veteran, and you belong to three groups, and so on and so forth. And so for me, the way I see this evolving is more intersectionality, more cross-pollination of the work. And when I see, notably in aviation, the Aviation Inclusion Summit that was in DC almost 2 years ago now, so there's going to be a repeat one this year in DC. It's once every 2 years. It's organized by NGPA. But what you do see there is that, one, it is actually sponsored by ALPA. Two, it is actually inviting and having heavy participation of Women in Aviation International, OBAP, PAPA, LPA, NGPA, and I'm sure I'm forgetting other organizations, but the common thread is the intersectionality. And what we discuss a lot about in those forums is the fact that ultimately the workforce it is we need at the end of the day is one of the main reasons why we're here. We all need that workforce that we try to secure, but there's just not enough workforce. And then it translates into actions that you've got to take, whether this be in terms of policies to hire. And by the way, one thing that is very important, your diversity may play well on the hiring side, it will play no factor on the firing side. Let's be very clear, because at the end of the day comes your year-end performance review. Regardless of the characteristic you have, your review will be the same. Meaning that if you bad in one characteristic, you'll still be bad with the other characteristic. Don't worry, you'll be fired. So let's be sure that this is absolutely clear, and you have to pass the same exams at the end of the day in any single group, right? So your performance will show and very quickly show. So retention is also where it can play out, right? Because if you're able to promote better employee relations, and at the end of the day, you change that culture, women don't leave, Latinos don't leave, Blacks don't leave, LGBT don't leave, disabled people don't leave. And so you've got to play in all those spaces to make sure that you're successful at retaining your people at the end of the day. So for us, it's a big hiring and retention game to make sure that we're successful in the space.
Well, those are very salient words. And in many ways, you know, if you're looking for a position at this point in your career, well, I don't know how close to everyone is to graduation and things. One thing that we've learned is that involvement in various levels of ownership, participation, and profit sharing, you might want to consider looking at organizational structures that encourage that. Organizations now, like ESOPs or EOTs, which are employee-owned trusts, that enable virtually not just top management, but enable 100% participation by all employees in not only the actual profit percentage, but in a gradual equity position. Why am I bringing that up? Is that the younger people, you know, at an entry level in this room could build tremendous equity if you sustain involvement over a longer time with entities that have that type of structure, number one. Number two, the most hands down, most expensive issue in any organization's overhead structure is sustained employment. Why? If you're in a specialized field, because it's very expensive to train somebody, particularly to a competency level where they can actually give back a value equal to or greater than, hopefully. And in our organization, it's a very simple, very, very simple. For every dollar that we pay a person, they need to bring back two. Now, is that in a direct way? That might be through more advanced, high quality control workmanship. It might be productivity. It might be through innovation. It might be through excellent business development efforts. It might be sophisticated accounting principles that mitigate tax impact. Those are all elements that can be contributed to by a diverse group. Now, from a business case standpoint, and also that goes parallel with environmental considerations, there are some very attractive programs that the federal government provides right now, like Title 26, Title 48H, that actually incentivize the optimization of existing infrastructure, utility infrastructure, to be optimized in terms of energy units per unit of production. Well, to qualify, now this is hardcore business, to qualify for any of those contracts, the organization must meet certain criteria associated with diversity. So if you're looking for positions, consider EOTs or ESOPs. Consider what percentage of like your potential employer's organization is in governmental contracts that require the diversity requirements. And consider, most importantly, this, everyone here has said that, the culture first and foremost. And if you are participating in a lab at this university, when people, or when the benefactor visits, reach out to them, make yourself known. And that's why I say that, is that's one way you can evaluate the type of people that are involved in that company. What type of outreach do they have to academia? Because we are investing in you because basically you are the future of each one of these organizations. Generation Z, that makes up about 25% of our employment right now. And we've never been more encouraged because they have such fresh ideas. And that's what you really want, that's what you bring to the table, by the way. In other words, you don't know what can't be done, so you might just go ahead and do it. And that's the reality of it. So I won't delay, but I am trying to make the point that it has to be understood that you need to make yourself known, and you make the evaluation. You make the employer actually be evaluated. You have to evaluate their propensity to employ you. It's a two-way street. And I think sometimes the cultural norms, or what is conventional orthodoxy associated with, well, no, you meet our demands. You know, this is our structure. This is how we operate. You have to be a company person. This is it. Well, the worm's turned because there is significant demand. You're in the catbird seat right now, if you don't know it or not. Long term, you have tremendous opportunity. You have tremendous growth potential. So just as one perspective over like a 40-year period, it is 180 degrees opposite of what it was when I started my career 200 years ago. Go ahead.
Let's hear from our last two speakers on this topic, but then I want to get questions from the audience. So be thinking about what you want to ask and who you want to ask specifically.
I really don't have a lot more to add, and everything has been said. I think the few words that I would leave you guys with is everything you've heard, right? And that, hey, new generation and volume that you guys speak, and just pass it on down. That's, you know, that's how you sort of change culture and then maintain culture. You got to pass it on down. That's all.
I think from my side, in terms of the future of diversity, I'm quite optimistic. And I feel that, you know, forums like this are what move the needle. I think leadership like what you all have at Embry-Riddle help champion that, as well as organizations being more aware that in order to do business in a future environment and actually make positive and great returns, diversity, global diversity is key. So I'm very optimistic. I see the future being more diverse within our organizations, more inclusive. And for the, you know, the generation that's up and coming, my advice is be open-minded, engage with people that you probably haven't engaged with before, so that you can seek that curiosity and understand other human beings that you might not associate yourself with usually, because you're going to face them in the workplace. You're going to deal with different backgrounds, different perspectives, different ideologies, different genders, different cultural backgrounds when you're sitting next to somebody in a cubicle, or if you're leading an organization's vision or mission. So I really advise those in the younger generation to seek that curiosity and be open-minded towards that. Those are my final words.
Thank you. I
I'll
think
run your mic around.
questions, I'll run that way too if you want. Does anybody have any questions?
Come on, students. Oh,
Offering it over to you.
Thank you so much for mentioning culture. I've been frustrated my whole life when people say that it's not really an issue we can worry about because there's equal opportunities available or stuff like that. What are action steps that you think could be taken to improve the culture in the entire industry, even if that might take a while?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that can be done. It is a multi-pronged approach. You have to, so we talk about compounding barriers. So literally from 1 years old, right? Someone can be told that aviation is a career for boys. Why would you want a little? Actually, I had a friend's baby shower recently, and I bought airplane toys because I'm a pilot. And one of the girls turned to me and she's like, "Ugh, you know, she's having a girl, right?" I was like, "What?" Literally. So, so that's still a problem. That still happens. And so it literally starts from there, right? And then you start to see, you know, STEM careers getting pushed more towards little boys, and there's a self-selection that starts to occur. We talk about see it, be it. You know, if little girls aren't seeing, or people of color or minorities or whatever it might be, if you're not seeing yourself represented in that career field, it's hard for you to imagine that. So it starts at a very young age, and again, not to keep plugging it, but feel free to look at this in the report because we actually have a really nice graphic that highlights this. So you have to attack it at literally every stage. It is making sure that there are mentoring opportunities available for young kids and young girls. It's making sure that, again, there is visibility at every phase of whatever that career field is. In this case, obviously aviation. I think from a more tangible for like companies to do, it's providing support from a leadership level on down, making sure that they are not only just saying whatever diversity talking points have been given to them, but that they actually are following through, and that they're walking the talk, or walking the walk. It's making sure that there's follow through as well. So again, there's always been a big emphasis on hiring. It's not just hiring, like you said. It's culture throughout. So it's not stopping there and saying, oh, we have a hiring goal. Not to say, again, I love the 50% goal because what United's doing is focusing on a lot more than just that hiring piece. But there was a while, even when I was in college, where a lot of airlines were claimed that they were hiring, you know, women and minorities. But if you looked at the numbers, it was still 6% or still 5%. So it's like, you know, some of these guys would get frustrated about it. I'm like, well, you just didn't get hired because you weren't good. Like it's not actually, because the numbers don't reflect that. If they were truly hiring only women and minorities over this cadre of guys that I was going to college with, the numbers would look very different. That's not the case. So there are a lot of changes that have to be made. And our recommendations really do kind of go the whole gambit. There are 55 of them, and I'm not going to regurgitate all of them. But most of them are focused on culturally, how do you shift it? And like you said, it's a long process. It's not going to happen overnight. In fact, we're not even going to see most of our recommendations even implemented for another decade, if not 2 decades. But they are focused really on changing the culture within a large organization, which then also, you know, changes it for the entire ecosystem. Which I'm sorry, because that's not, there are more specifics, but I don't have it in front of me, or else I could probably give you way more specific examples, but I definitely would encourage you to check out the report.
I'll add a couple because I think there are some that are pretty important. You did mention mentorship, and mentorship is very important to us. We want to make sure that we have leaders that can model. And so we pair, generally speaking, folks together in a way where you have a mentor at least at a level 1 or 2 higher than you are. But then there's more than mentorship, there's also sponsorship. And that is something that's very different and that you might not be aware of. And so sponsorship occurs when we've detected that you're high potential. And if you've been labeled high potential, we'll enable you to have a little bit more help in the background that you don't know about. And that really helps promote. It is absolutely meritocratically determined, but then it happens and helps propel women ahead, helps propel BIPOC ahead, and so on and so forth. And that's very important because it changes the game. And then, of course, all the affinity groups, because at the end of the day, if you want to change the culture, you've got to make sure that your employees are able to feel the way they are at work, not just at home. So 3 examples I wanted to provide.
Do we have another question? Oh, you're here. Cool. Nice and close.
Hi, hello everyone. I have a question related to opportunities for international people. I think it's something, how's the aviation industry addressing unequal opportunities for international candidates that always face, those barriers, visa barriers. I think it's part of inequality, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Thank you.
I'd say that's a larger federal government problem, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is a very hard one. I'm going to speak with this having been in those shoes. And I'm going to take a different take on it. It's really about you and finding that one opportunity that's really going to enable you to open that door. So as that young embry-riddled student with my fresh MBA, I started looking for a job 6 months before graduating because I knew I had this little hurdle, which is called not being a citizen, which is called not being legally authorized to work. And this is governed by parameters that are outside of my control. So I gave it my all in. And I did 234 job applications before I landed that one interview. That one interview who happened to be with an Embry-Riddle alum. And that person opened the door for me. And then I had to make my proofs. Now, immigration in 2005, I know I age myself, is a little bit different than immigration in 2024, and the playbook is somewhat different. You actually have a chance to get an OPT. 18 months, I think, maybe 24 in some cases. Leverage those chances. Make your proof with an internship. And what I would say is don't only look at the shiny object. I got it, United's pretty sexy. But it's not the end all be all. There are other companies out there, and I will tell you that small and medium-sized businesses are in dire need, and they will be more able to sponsor you because they can more easily prove that they struggle to hire than we can. And that is actually making it easier to start your career. And so that would be also one piece of advice. The shiny object might be the destination, but it may not be the start of the journey.
I can speak to that as a smaller organization. What he's saying is exactly right. That 18-month period, pursue internships. And you'll have the credential of a degree. I don't know what your focus is, but smaller companies, again, have the need to fulfill the requirement. They don't have the options of having, 5,000 people apply to them. And exactly what he said about it's about you. And fundamentally, don't give up. Don't ever, ever give up. And look at the smaller organization maybe as a stepping stone. Don't come to work for us to do that, of course, but in truth, that's how it works in reality. In other words, you start with the internship, that's a win-win situation, because the smaller company wouldn't be able to afford necessarily an entity or a candidate that would fulfill that requirement. They might be on a project, which would have a beginning and an end. Then who knows, you might find like an opportunity to innovate in a smaller organization that you can make a more significantly recognizable contribution earlier on than with a huge entity. But the key is don't give up.
Stop us on that because we've run out of time. Can we please show our appreciation to the panel, who I'm going to ask to stay and answer questions for the students who get to come up. Thank you so much.